Not wanting to be outdone, Union Pacific launched their own streamlined trains with a new yellow, brown, and red livery. That yellow color scheme is still maintained today on UP's business fleet of passenger cars. In 1937, Southern Pacific put into service what some would call the most beautiful train in the world, the Daylight. In Los Angeles, as the moment of departure for the $1 million train was drawing near, lovely Miss Olivia de Havilland, star of Warner Brothers Studio, stepped to the microphone.
May you have a safe and speedy journey. With this bottle of California champagne, I christen you the Daylight. Good luck and Godspeed.
Well, the colors, the red, orange, black, and silver were so vivid and so unrelated to a train. I guess as a child, I must have thought, well, gee, this must be the circus train that's pulled in. But I didn't know what to make of it. It was just so different from any other train I'd ever seen.
Only 2 months after the Daylight went into service, Santa Fe put its best foot forward when the Super Chief made its first revenue run from Los Angeles to Chicago. The Super Chief was indeed the flagship train for the Santa Fe.
The Super Chief was the embodiment of all the opportunities and economic pressures of the 1930s. It was a all stainless steel, lightweight train, but not articulated like the Pioneer Zephyr, but made up of individual cars. It was powered by an internal combustion locomotive, the General Motors E-units, not a streamlined steam locomotive. It represented a set of challenges that no other railroad had to respond to, because the Santa Fe's route from Chicago to Los Angeles was the longest of the long-distance, high-speed, streamlined train routes in the United States, through an area of very limited population, very limited services.
The entertainment colony patronized the Super Chief for many years. Passenger lists included such names as Judy Garland, Edgar Bergen with Charlie McCarthy, Gloria Swanson, Martin and Lewis, Ronald Reagan, Lucy and Desi, Alan Ladd, and Joseph Cotton, to name a few. Chef Curtis Jefferson remembers a few of the famous passengers who rode the Super Chief.
Pearl Bailey would talk you to death, there's no doubt about that. She talked to you so long to, look here, Miss Pearl, nice talking to you, but I got to go and try to get ready for my dinner. Okay, Chef, I'm glad you came out. Liz Taylor, I didn't meet her. I didn't do nothing but cook for her. I never met her and Richard Burton, but I know I cooked for him all the way across country.
During the same period in the 1930s, another first-class train made its debut. The 20th Century Limited got its start in 1902, but in 1938, a new version of this train was introduced. Carl Zimmerman shares his thoughts about what some consider the most famous train ever to run in America.
Well, the 20th Century Limited, there is this sort of cosmic magic that I think people across the country felt for the many years the train ran. Luxury, speed, which was very important back in 1902 when the train first operated, and all the way through the 30s when it was first streamlined. Style, opulence. It was the train of the elite and the train of the wealthy, the train of businessmen. It would be the train that the stars coming in from the West Coast on the Santa Fe would take when they transferred from the Chief or the Super Chief.
You really felt something special. Number one, when you got on the train, you walked down that red carpet, you got on the train, you really didn't know who else was going to be on that train. It was the train of the celebrities. And so you were expecting always to see some noted person. You'd run into him in the diner or the observation or something.
My first real experience with the train happened when it was toward the end of its career, so it was not quite as elegant as it might have been in earlier years. But I had taken the France back. A friend of mine and I had done a tour of Europe, and we had docked on the France, and then I was to take the 20th Century Limited to Chicago and then the Denver Zephyr back home to Denver. And I remember going down and walking down 42nd Street toward Grand Central Terminal and seeing the big Chrysler building, which had been a building that had always been a favorite of mine, looming up over the edge of the station, and then walking into the station for the very first time and seeing the huge ceiling with the with the constellation and the stars in the roof, and then I remembered vividly the little information booth in the center of the thing with the gold clock on the top with the 4 faces and so on. Then I walked over to the track where the train was to leave, and I was there, you know, very early because I was so excited about riding on this train that I'd heard about all my life. And I could see they had the gate closed so they wouldn't let the passengers in, but they were getting ready for the train, and this enormous push cart came up and with several workmen there, and what it was rolled up was the red carpet, and they dumped the red carpet, they lifted it off and set it down, and then they started unrolling this carpet that went the length of the train. The roll was huge. It must have been, you know, 3 or 4 feet tall. And there, woven into the pattern of the red carpet, was the 20th Century logo. And I thought, now this is a very special way to travel.
A high-class passenger train, the highest standards of passenger service. Despite all the talk about the Super Chief, truly nothing beat the 20th Century Limited. It was the top of the line.
The 20th Century Limited came to an abrupt end on December 3, 1967, when the train departed Grand Central Terminal for the last time. This closed out 65 years of memories, from the Dreyfuss-styled streamlined Hudson locomotives and 2-tone gray liveries to the updated 1948 version of the train. An era in railroading had ended. While the 20th Century Limited never had dome cars, other railroads embraced this new concept in travel. After World War II, when railroads enjoyed a short renaissance, this innovation really enhanced rail travel. In 1945, the first dome car was put into service. Bill Kratville provides some history.
The first dome car was the Silver Dome, and it was built at Aurora Shop. So they took a standard flat-top coach and put a dome on it.
After the war, General Motors, in an effort to promote their diesel locomotives, teamed up with Pullman Standard to produce a 4-car Train of Tomorrow. It toured the country in 1947 and 1948. Industrial designer Otto Kohler even proposed some dome car designs for future rail travel. The California Zephyr is considered to be the most famous dome car train ever launched. Starting in 1949, the train was operated from Chicago to Oakland by 3 railroads: the Burlington, Rio Grande, and Western Pacific. When the California Zephyr, or CZ, was terminated in 1970, dome car travel continued on a reduced version of the train. It operated as the Rio Grande Zephyr from Denver to Salt Lake City until 1983.
Well, people often compare the California Zephyr with other trains in the far west after the end of World War II. Some of those trains actually were rolling before World War II began, such as the Super Chief. North Coast Limited that went on the Northern Pacific up the northern tier of states. The Union Pacific and other railroads were marketing their city of San Francisco, city of Los Angeles. But I think what was so unique about the California Zephyr were those dome cars and the gleaming all silver look of the stainless steel. The dome cars were the real distinction. And the California Zephyr was not the first train with the dome car by any means, but it simply put those domes out front and center, and you could, almost anyone in the train would have significant time up there. Those were not seats that were sold, but seats that were available to anyone on kind of a first-come basis.